There is no trusting a Sith Lord, especially one named Palpatine. If you were ever forced into a situation where you had to bargain with the Lord of the Dark Side, just know that they shake your hand with fingers crossed behind their back, and typically a poisonous smile. Sidious in particular was a subscriber to Bane's philosophy, keeping people around so long as they are useful and never after. But Palpatine, always the one to work in complete secrecy, was very good at shoring up those loose ends. So when he tossed someone away he no longer had any use for, he didn't just leave them alone, but he completely destroyed them. No matter how loyal they were to him, or how useful they had been, Sidious did not care. Palpatine's betrayals were frequent, permanent, and devastating. But perhaps the greatest betrayal anyone suffered from his hand had to be the Geonosians. Even though they're bugs, it gets really bad. Under Archduke Poggle the Lesser, they were entirely devoted to the Separatist cause, and not only that, but they were entrusted with the very construction of the Death Star. But once Palpatine decided to be done with them, he would commit one of the worst atrocities in all of Star Wars lore. Welcome to the archives, and let's open today's holocron. A lot of people don't think much of the Geonosians. They were violent, a savage race with vile and disgusting practices. Their insect-like physiology and almost soulless hive-mindedness meant that they were often an object of scorn both in the galaxy and in our world as Star Wars fans. The Geonosians were controlled by one queen who made them dig out endless colonies, work in factories producing droids for the evil Separatist army. They greatly enjoyed watching others suffer in gladiatorial combat, and were quick to pick up arms themselves if it meant they got to fight outsiders. They were not very chill. These bugs were also known for killing and cannibalizing each other if they meant they got a better position or work in the colony. The Geonosians were bred to work, and would literally die if they did not get to. This was something that Poggle the Lesser took great advantage of when Dooku approached him with the plans of the Death Star. Poggle designated some of his people to work in the droid factories, while others worked in secret to refine the Death Star's blueprints and work on the metal components for the battle station's frame. At the time of the Clone Wars, Sidious had many moving parts that it would take any normal person to become completely overwhelmed by. He was orchestrating the events of the Clone Wars to weaken the Republic, running the Republic as the Supreme Chancellor, manipulating the Jedi and Anakin, and having his ultimate weapon under construction, all in total secrecy. It was lucky for him that Dooku was trustworthy, and that Geonosians were very good at working efficiently in terrible underground conditions. Many don't know that the Geonosians were the ones that did the bulk of the work of the frame of the Death Star, and the Super Laser's composite dish during the Clone Wars as well. Honestly, as many years as the DS-1 battle station took to finish, it would have taken much longer had it not been for the diligent efforts of the Geonosians. Poggle worked them slavishly day and night, while making the job itself look appealing and favorable to other Geonosians. This caused internal strife, as few members of the colony began to murder one another for an opportunity to labor on the Death Star. And once they got the opportunity, they were quite literally worked to death by Poggle. Poggle was under the impression that the Death Star was a weapon for the Separatists, a trump card used to destroy the Republic and to end the war, so he had intended to have the project completed as quickly as possible. That way he would have a favorable role in the new galactic order that the Separatists had dreamed of. Of course, as much as he knew about the Death Star, he had no knowledge of the Empire at all. Dooku and Sidious knew that someone as loyal and greedy as Poggle the Lesser would never crack under Republic interrogation, but they definitely didn't trust him with the knowledge of the real end goal. He, like the rest of the Separatists, would be slain on Mustafar by Vader. Sidious still had quite a bit of use for the Geonosians though, as he needed all hands on deck to finish the Death Star in a suitable amount of time. So, along with the Wookiee slaves from Kashyyyk, he had the insects of Geonosis continue to labor on bulk of the Death Star. He had a new Archduke instated to replace Poggle. He was a weaker Archduke with less ambition, serving as more of a puppet figure for Palpatine directly. Only a few years into the Empire's reign, and the Geonosians weren't able to figure out how to design or construct the super laser, which of course was the main weapon of the Death Star. Architectural intelligence was a strong suit of the species, but when it came to the advanced scientific breakthroughs, you weren't going to find any in the bug-like hive mind. So, Project Celestial Power was created, and the design of the super laser was given over to a man by the name of Galen Erso. For Sidious, this was the indication that the Geonosians had outlived their usefulness, as the project was entering a crucial stage where raw construction framework could just be finished by the Wookiees. The nail in the coffin for the species was when a rogue queen in the Korakani Mound attempted to order her drones to sabotage the Death Star. Upon learning of this, Lord Vader went into the colony with a contingent of Death Troopers to punish them. Sidious officially then found the Geonosians to be a liability, so he tasked Grand Moff Tarkin with creating a solution. Tarkin was the perfect man for the job. Though he was no Sith, he was ruthless and calculatedly cruel. His apparent lack of any sort of compassion and his ability to commit terrible acts made him trustworthy to the Emperor. And just like all the other times, Tarkin would not disappoint here. Once the Death Star's hyperdrive was operational, Tarkin ordered the Imperial Weapons Division to sterilize the Geonosians, hitting them with gas canisters launched into their hives. These gas canisters poisoned every member of the colonies. Millions of them died either to the gas canisters or orbital bombardment of their hives that would follow. They were unable to reproduce to make up for their numbers, as the queens were sterilized. Soon, even the queens would die. In the biggest betrayal of Palpatine's long career of betrayals, he had turned on the very people that had laid the groundwork for the Death Star, that made it possible. He turned his back on them as the death toll reached an absolutely staggering 100 billion Geonosians, the largest genocide in the Empire's history by far. In a single act, Sidious essentially rendered the entire Geonosian species extinct. But there was a small hope. In the year 2 BBY, the rebel crew on the Ghost, along with Captain Rex, discovered a Geonosian child, a child by the name of Click-Clack, who protected the last queen egg. But despite the efforts, when the egg hatched, the very last Geonosian queen was revealed to also have been sterilized. She named herself Karina and tried in vain to rebuild her people. And soon, Karina used the vast technological resources of Geonosis to attach herself to a portable droid factory. And from here, she generated specifically modified B-1 battle droids, droids made to resemble her dead people. Although they were artificial mockeries of the Geonosians, Karina considered these abominations to be her children. But this wouldn't last long either. The Empire had decided to take care of that too. Lord Vader arrived to take the final factory from her to build a droid army for his own purposes. Despite Karina surviving this encounter with Vader and swearing to rebuild her empire, this was the last that we have seen of the Geonosians in canon. And that, my friends, is what we believe to have been Palpatine's greatest betrayal in all of the lore. Now, of course, he's betrayed people like Maul, Dooku, and Vader on a personal level, but it's difficult to top a species extinction event after they did the grunt work of creating his ultimate weapon. Even for Palpatine, that's pretty cold. The Geonosians may not have been the most desirable people to encounter, but it goes without saying that they didn't exactly deserve genocide. But of course, Palpatine doesn't care for ethics, loyalty, or repaying one favor for another. He cares about power and his own plans. And as soon as someone or something no longer aligns with that plan, then they are to be irrecoverably destroyed. But anyway, friends, what are your thoughts on this? Is this one of the worst things that the Emperor has done? Or can you think of a different one worse? Let us know your thoughts in the comments down below. And as always, may the Force be with you, and I hope you're having an amazing day.